Good evening, everybody who's watching this interesting edition of Mark's Mouthpiece on Facebook Live. This week, my guests are Steve Leisering from University of Kansas, David Bilger, principal trumpet of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and Baset Azizi, who is our kind of feature this week. And so thank you, gentlemen, for all being on. And Baset, I guess I want to start with you. I'd like to know how you started playing the trumpet in Afghanistan, because I know that there's not a ton of trumpet history there. So if you could kind of talk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us first. When I was in Afghanistan, I went to a private school for 2 years. That after seventh grade, they had a policy that girls and boys could not study together in the same classroom in a school. And my dad did not support that policy, so he started searching for a school where we could all study together. And he really liked the environment and the music school in Kabul. So he asked me if I want to play music. I was excited. I thought if I go to music school, I'm not going to study anymore, do homework anymore. I'm just playing music. I didn't know that I will need to study all subjects, but also work hard as a musician. That's how I started playing trumpet. And to get to the music school in Afghanistan, since it's a very small school, you need to audition to get there. So they make sure that you're interested in music, but also that maybe you have a little bit of talent to be able to become a musician. After I passed that placement test, the trumpet teacher asked me what I want to play, and I said I would like to play the piano. And he said, "No, you play the trumpet." And he took me to the trumpet studio and gave me a mouthpiece and the trumpet. He said, "This is how you play." I was not happy about it because since 1980s, I think we did not have really good trumpet players in Afghanistan, and later on because Taliban completely banned music in Afghanistan. So growing up, I did not see trumpet players on media. The only thing I knew was piano, drums, violin, guitar, and stuff like that. So playing trumpet was like, well, I came here to have fun, not to play this kind of an instrument. This didn't look nice to me, and of course, since I never seen it before, I was like, okay. But also, I didn't want to say no to the trumpet teacher because I thought this might be disrespectful. So I continued, and when I learned how to play five notes on the trumpet, like C, D, E, F, G, I was like, okay, I like it. And I very much liked the trumpet sound of my trumpet teacher, and that's how I started.
So there was no reference for you to listen to, and it was just only the sound of your teacher, James Herzog, that was there. Were there any recordings of any kind that you were able to access to hear anybody else play the trumpet at all?
Yeah, of course. I had access to internet, of course, so I would download a lot of music and have it on my computer so I can listen to it all the time. And so I have listened to a lot of trumpet players, including Maurice Andre. And then, as I learned a little bit more about other players, I started liking other players as well. So I did listen a little bit here and there, but yeah, first it was my trumpet teacher.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about the atmosphere in Afghanistan when you were young, and maybe some of the things that you kind of had to deal with that we probably aren't aware of in this part of the world?
Yeah, well, I mean, for almost 42, 43 years, we are having very unstable country, and as you know, war is happening every day. And when I was born, it was the first Taliban rule, and 2 years after that, exactly, I think it was 2 years and 2 days, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. When the U.S. forces were in Afghanistan, still the situation was not good because the Taliban, Afghan government, U.S. forces will all fight against each other. Of course, let me be clear: Afghan government, U.S. forces would fight against the Taliban, and Taliban against these two agencies or governments. So did not experience a peaceful life for sure, difficult, but I think when you live it, you figure out how to do it. When I arrived in the US, then I realized how unsafe Afghanistan was because at the time when I was there, we were all dealing we were all dealing in this situation. So I did not know what safe life really meant at the time. But yeah, I mean, one of our concert performance was bombed in 2014. That a few people died. The director of our music school was injured. That was, of course, a target from the Taliban to kill the director of the music school and of course attack the music school. And New York Times later reported that they tried to do the same thing again, but of course it was good that it didn't happen. But stuff like that will happen all the time, and not only targets for specifically for the music school. Just living in Afghanistan was a difficult time. That's the reason that my trumpet teachers left Kabul because of the security issues, and no one else wanted to fill that position. Well, the salary was good, I thought, but security was a problem, so people didn't want to go there anymore.
So, did you also talk about the danger of you just playing a Western instrument in that environment as well? Because anything Western is kind of frowned upon by the Taliban. And what was that risk like to you when you were just having a trumpet?
Well, the Taliban believe that playing music, being a musician, is a sinful thing to do, and not only Western instrument, but any kind of music. Right now, music is again banned in Afghanistan, and pretty much all musicians that they're in Kabul still, they are either selling stuff on the streets or still using their savings to eat daily. So they do not work even if they're playing traditional Afghan instruments. But of course, yeah, playing something like the trumpet, it's a little bit different. When I started playing the trumpet, I was a young kid and I was always excited to tell people like, yeah, I play music, and I thought that's a fun thing. But soon I realized that a lot of people did not appreciate that, and so for that reason, then I learned that I should not tell everyone that I play the trumpet. I have played for both our presidents and other political leaders, which often it will be live on TV. And when I would come home, people would see me on the street, or if I would go to bakery to get naan or get haircut or whatever, people say, "Oh, I saw you on TV today," and I would say, "Well, no, I was not that person. I just go to a public school. I wish I was on TV, but no, that was not me." Saying stuff like that was because I knew if I say to people that yes, I am that person, I will risk my family's life and my own life.
Amazing. And could you talk a little bit about how you found David Bilger?
Yeah, so as I said, my trumpet teachers left. In Afghanistan, I mainly had two trumpet teachers. One was James, and another one was John, who was from Chicago, a great person for sure. They both left eventually because of the security issues, and that's when I wanted to connect with other trumpet teachers and learn and continue to learn the trumpet, because when I wanted to play the trumpet, I thought, well, I should become the best trumpet player possible. For that reason, I always listen to different kind of music, and also reach out to trumpet players for help. And I remember, I don't remember actually if I was at home or in school. I remember listening to one of Mr. Belger's master classes on YouTube. And I think he started playing. It was like an opening thing, and I was like, wow, I like this sound. And right now, I think what I liked about it was, I think, maybe personality. And I connected not only with music but also with the personality. And I was like, wow, I want to listen to more of this trumpet player. I didn't know if he was famous. I didn't know he was working at Curtis and the Philadelphia Orchestra. I didn't know about those things, but I thought, well, this is a really nice trumpet sound, and I want to hear more. And I started listening a little bit more, and then I thought, well, maybe I can reach him, send him an email or whatever. And I went on Facebook, and and he was there. So I sent him a friend request, and he added me, and so I texted him a message, and that's how we connected.
Amazing. David, you remember talk about the first time you got these messages from Baset from
Well, yeah, it was
Afghanistan?
hilarious, actually. It was he introduced himself and said, "I'm the best trumpet player in Afghanistan because there are only two." And it's just, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of personality going on here, and so I was like, well, what do you need? What do you want? What can I do to help? And that's when we started, you know, doing some lessons over the web, which I think was actually sort of amazing. It felt really amazing that with the time difference of eight 8.5 hours or whatever it was, um, and 7,000 miles away in a place that we think of as being, a place that does lack that security and therefore sometimes infrastructure, that we were able to get decent enough internet connections to be able to do stuff. And part of it was the lessons happened at the music school, so they had, I think, some good internet. But I always remember one lesson where, working out the time zone was a sort of an issue. It would be late night here and early morning in Kabul, and Bassett was like, he was on he, never late. He was always there, and I always start up by saying, "Oh, you all warmed up?" And it was always yes, even though maybe it was 6:30 in the morning there. And this day, he's like, "No," and I'm like, oh, "What happened?" And he said, "It's raining." I went, "It's raining," and he said, "I'll explain. I'll send you pictures." Instead of trying to talk about it. And then after the lesson, I got some photographs showed up, and and it was like 2 feet of water and mud that he was trudging through to get to a lesson at dawn. And I'm thinking, that kind of commitment, how can you not want to just reward that by doing whatever you can?
Amazing. I mean, how did that just kind of interacting with him? How did that change your perspective, or maybe the next time a student that you were teaching in person had an excuse where you're like, "Listen, this guy just did this. How do what does that do to your mindset and as a player and a teacher both?"
Well, I don't know. I mean, most of the folks I work with are pretty
Pretty motivated.
dedicated, and as a teacher, I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but sometimes the best lessons are the ones where the students sound the worst, because you can actually dig into problems. So I don't necessarily bust on people for not being prepared once. They get a mulligan every once in a while,
Sure.
but moreover, it was just showing this integrity and this desire um, that Bassett has. And it's like, well, and that's when I said to my wife, I said, he's going to change the world somehow. I don't know how, but he's gonna change the world. And and I still believe that wholeheartedly. I who knows what the future is going to be, but I know that the world is a much richer place for having him in it, and we're gonna all benefit from this incredible hunk of humanity that we're sitting here with tonight. It's just an amazing young man. And that's when he's all along. It was like, well, my goal is to go to Interlochen. I want to come to the States, and I'm like, how are we going to make that work, right? So I started. We started coaching Rep to make a video recording to send off, and then there was an amazing woman in Dallas named Robin Korovar who helped with all of the like the applications and all of the written stuff, and was also a sort of a great non-trumpet mentor, and made this stuff work in an amazing way. And he put in the work, and we recorded a really nice Artunian and some other stuff, and lo and behold, he got the congrats, you're in an Interlochen. And then it was like, oh man, what's next? How do we make that part work? How do we get him here, right? Because it's not just like getting in your car from Detroit and going up to Interlaken, or flying in from Cleveland or whatever. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, get a visa and get a ton of money because the flight's expensive, and getting all the clothes, and Interlaken was generous, but we still had to come up with a pile of money. So that's when I started feeling the pressure. It was like, uh-oh, these can't let these dreams die. We got to do something. And fortunately, that's when the world stepped up. I mean, we started a GoFundMe, and I knew it had a good chance of success because some of the first gifts, one of the first was $5,000 from our music director, Yannick Nézet-Séguin, and then another 5 grand from the Philadelphia Orchestra chairman of the board, Rich Worley, at that time. And so all of a sudden we were starting with 10,000 in the GoFundMe, which makes people say, "Hey, maybe this is going to work. I'll give $5 or $10 or $20 or 100, whatever it was." And so many people just, sort of wanted to help. And at first it was pretty much limited to the music community. It's like, you lean on your friends. So it was a whole pile of trumpet players and other musicians just really helping out. And it was awesome as that number got bigger and we realized it was going to happen. But then we had to work on getting the visa, and I'll let Baset talk about that, because this also was like a very interesting story, because it didn't happen right away. In fact, it didn't happen right away. So why don't you go ahead and tell?
Yeah, Baset, what happened?
Yeah, so after everything Mr. Bell just said, I scheduled an appointment at the U.S. Embassy. I went there, I had a very quick interview. I think the person asked me, the officer asked me 2 questions. And one was what piece of music you like? And I was like, well, I like, and he was like, no, just tell me one. And I was like, okay, Argentinian. And then he was like, will you come back or will you stay there? I said, well, if I can continue my education, most likely I will say, well, okay. And he gave me, I believe it was a yellow card. And he said, well, get back to you in 2 weeks and we'll let you know. And waited for a while. Didn't know what will happen, of course. And I think the day that I got my visa was when I was actually at the U.S. Embassy performing with Den Mountain Division Band. And when you go to the U.S. Embassy, you need to give your phones at the door because they would not allow you to have it with you. And so I was there all day, and so the embassy, I believe, tried to contact me, but because my phone was at the gate, I couldn't respond. When I went home, my mom said, well, the embassy called and said, you can come and pick up his passport. And I was like, well, passport with visa or only passport? But they didn't say anything to my mom. So the next day I called him. I said, well, what's happening? He was like, well, you can come pick your passport. I said, well, if it's the passport, well, a visa, you can keep it. Otherwise, I can come. And they said, well, yes, you have your visa as well. And I wanted to pick that up that day. But of course, it was, an interesting situation because I didn't know that for sure I would be able to get it or not, because I had friends and they have applied before and they were denied. And so I was not sure if it will happen, but I was again once more very fortunate to be able to get it at the first try.
Well, we were freaking out a little because I'm thinking, uh-oh, you got a yellow card. That's like in soccer, that's not a good thing, right? The next thing's the red card and you're out. But while they were telling you wait a couple of weeks, they were making phone calls to those of us in the U.S. trying to do interviews and find out how serious this was and were their finances in place. And one of the major questions was, is he going to get over here and then when his visa's up disappear? and and then become an undocumented person in the U.S., which is what they didn't want to have happen. So they were doing a lot of research behind the scenes to make sure that this was all really serious, and just sort of the tone of the whole thing had me really worried. um, you know, it was during a time where I think we were also a little less, um, we were a little bit more worried about what was going to happen with immigration and those kinds of things. It was sort of the start of a push to limit who's coming into the country, and we were hoping that wasn't going to apply in this case. And fortunately, it all came through. But I remember when I got the message that the visa was there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, it's total success. And then it was, all right, let's get plane tickets, and then let's see if his mom's gonna cry when he leaves. And she did, right?
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, Basit, talk about that leaving Afghanistan to come to the United States. I mean, what that must have been very difficult to leave your family behind, especially at that age. Can you kind of talk
Yeah.
about that? And
Yeah, I was 16, and as I said before, I never thought of leaving Afghanistan or my family before that. I even didn't know that was a possibility for students to go abroad for high school. I've heard of people going to college, but not high school. So I wasn't very sure, but when I told my parents about this exciting news, they were very happy for me and of course excited, and they told me that I should go and pursue my dreams. They were very supportive of it, but of course they didn't know that for a very long period of time we will not see each other. So we didn't know about that, but they were supportive of it. And I remember the day I left, of course, people will cry a little bit. I didn't cry myself until I gave my younger sister a hug, and I was like, "Oh, I think maybe I should cry too now." But maybe because she was my younger sister. But I mean, I always made fun of my other sisters and mom, like, why are you crying? I mean, but when I hugged her, she was like, there was a little bit different situation. And I arrived here on August 2nd. It took me 2 days to arrive here, and then I've been living in the U since then.
and when did you and Dave finally meet in person?
Yeah, it was September 2016, I believe.
Yeah, at Interlaken. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he was
I
very
forgot
kind
to
to. Yeah, he was very
forgot to
kind
mention.
to come to Interlaken to meet, and then that's where we completed the CBS News, because I believe that piece was recorded in 3-4 different places. I know we did one part in Afghanistan, and one was in Philadelphia, and finally in Michigan.
Yeah, together, and that's when we finally got to play duets in real time, because
Yes,
over Facebook, not so, or Zoom. I guess it was
the sky.
Skype. It was Skype.
Yes.
Oh, even worse. Um, with the latency, it was great to actually be able to make some music together and get to hang out in person.
Well, I
But
think
before that, like in late July, right before you flew over, um, you asked if I could if I could Skype with your family because your parents wanted to talk to me. And this is a great story because I was in Colorado, and I was in a with my family, and my son was asleep, and I didn't want to be. It was a small hotel room, and so it's like I tried to get a place where I could get internet and talk, but they weren't really helpful at this hotel. So I'm in the lobby of the hotel, um, and Baset's dad gets on, and he's quite a noble figure, and he was wearing all black, and Baset is in the interpreter, but I'm in the lobby, and there's definitely on my screen a Mideast-looking man speaking in a language people don't know that sounds a lot like it could be, you know, something not right going on, and there was some Texan in there with a big hat, and he kept circling around and looking over my shoulder and trying to see what was going on, and it was hilarious. But that's when his parents were. It was just such a heartfelt thanks. They were so glad that he was getting this opportunity, and that's when his dad said, "And I'd love for you to make it work for him to get his college degree in the U.S. as well. Do you promise to help him?" Little bit of pressure. But the answer was, of course. But we never know where life's going to take us, and that's you know saying you'll help is great. Saying the outcome is a totally different thing. And fortunately, it's been a great outcome, I think.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. I mean, Basit, can you talk about the adjustments you made when you came over to the U.S.? What was the culture shock like?
Yeah, I think, with people I was fine because what my understanding is that there are good people here in Afghanistan and in many other parts of the world. And when I arrived here, I connected with so many kind people that I never thought, that these people are American people and I'm from Afghanistan and we're different. I thought it's the same thing. People were kind like my own family. And so that was of course not a shock. But when I went to Interlaken, that was a little bit interesting situation because that was perhaps first time I've been in a very small place in my whole life. Kabul was about maybe more than 6 million people. And I was used to that kind of life. When I went to Interlaken, I looked around, it's only trees and water, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And I was not happy for sure. I wanted to go back. I didn't do some of the things that they asked me to do because I was just not happy there. I was like, this is not going to work. Because for me, I thought this is kind of like a village. I was a city person, didn't like that. But when Mr. Bodio came there, we talked a little bit. He told me about his personal experiences. He asked me, just do some of the things that they asked you to do, and I said, sure, I will do. And then I was fine. But of course, having him there, just telling me, you can do it. It helped me for sure to then cooperate with the school and do some of the things that they asked me to do, because I was thinking like I just arrived here and I'm by myself, and now you're asking me to do community service and do this and that. I'm like, I do not like that. So I didn't do some of those things, but after 2 weeks or so, I started being helpful again.
I got a lot of phone calls those first couple of weeks. And when I got there, it was like, okay, we need to have a meeting, and it was like, okay. So some of the administrators are like, he doesn't like the rules so much. Certainly didn't like the uniform. I was like, okay,
What got you
you tried to get out of that as often as you could. I don't know. Did you ever start to appreciate the idea of a uniform or not?
Yeah, no, I mean, I always had the uniform, but sometimes, when my thinking was, I mean, when someone special is coming, then you don't need to have your uniform but I also now understand we were still on campus and all those things, and boarding school and all those things. But the thing is, I was raised very independent. I did what I wanted to do. And my parents never told me like, you must do this and that's the only way. And so, growing up that way, I was always like, okay, I can make decisions. And, when people start telling you that this is the only way you should do it, then I'm like, okay, this is not going to work for me. And I mean, some of my really good friends, they advise me to do, things in life, but they never tell me that you must do this. That's the only way. They tell you, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try this. And that's how my mind, I think, works. But when someone is like, you must do this, like, okay, I'm not really willing to do that anymore. So that was a difficult part, but in terms of everything else, I think I was fine. The only thing was, when I first arrived in the US, I remember I had a burger and fries, and I finished eating the burger, and I said to my friend, like, okay, what is the meal? And she looked at me, was like, okay, this was the meal. Do you need more food? I said, well, this was a burger. She said, no, this is meal. I was, okay, I guess this is meal. It's interesting. And I didn't know, like in the US, people will have burger as food, as a meal. Because in Afghanistan, when I would finish school at 3 p.m., on my way home, I would get a burger, eat on the way, and go home and eat. They still have food at 6 p.m. So when I had a burger here, I was like, wow, this is interesting. So over time, I learned to not eat much because in Afghanistan, I would eat much more food. And in the US, I think people eat a little bit smaller meals or whatever. So that was the only interesting thing. I thought, wow, these people eat burgers for meal. Interesting. But other than that, I think everything went really fine.
Well, and then there's the whole language thing, because, um, you know, your English was amazingly good from coming from Kabul, but to be thrown into an academic setting like that, you had some serious work to do. And then we got grades for that first semester. He made the dean's list. I'm like, how did you do that? It's like, so, he may be saying he doesn't want to follow the rules so much, but there was a lot of work that went into it. And there's, I thought that was just so impressive. I mean, it was like I was sort of expecting that there would be a ramp up into the academic success, but clearly it was just like, all right, I know what I have to do, and I'm gonna do it.
And, and I
It's
think for
really
people that
impressive.
haven't seen this, they should Google the Steve Hartman, Steve Hartman part of CBS, and you can find that. It's kind of a tearjerker, shot me, you know, make the Kleenex come out on a Sunday morning kind of thing.
Well, we were crying too, so it was all good.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. And so, Basit, you did your last year of high school there, and then you wound up at Kansas with Steve Leisering. Can you two talk about how all that kind of happened and how you guys connected?
Yes, and then I think that's also a funny story because at the time I didn't know Mr. Weiss, and he reached out on Facebook and he told me about the University of Kansas and Kansas. And I didn't know what he was really talking about because I never heard of Kansas before. And I was not so sure. So I asked Mr. Belcher and told him like this trumpet teacher is reaching out and I have no idea what's happening. And he said, well, let me talk with him. And they both talked with each other. And then Mr. Belcher said, well, it's a university and maybe you should consider auditioning. And I said, sure. Mr. Leisering and his friends were really kind to invite me to Kansas for a week. I came here, visited school. I wasn't so sure. When I came to Kansas, I saw there's not big buildings and stuff. I was like, wow, this will be interesting too. So yeah, I remember I was in the music school my last day before leaving back to Interlaken, and me and Mr. Belger were texting, and he said, "What? How do you like the school?" And I was like, "I'm not so sure. I might not be coming here." But when I was in the music school, I was waiting for a lesson with Mr. Leistering, and we had about 2 hours lesson, and I thought, wow, I really like what he has to say, and that of course changed my mind about this option. And of course, there's a lot of other things that happened later on, but that was the first thing that I thought, wow, okay, I like the trumpet teacher and what he's offering. And so at that time, I started thinking positively, more positively about KU and Kansas. But again, at the time, I didn't know anything about here. So that's why I wasn't so sure.
Well, yeah, well, I saw the CBS News thing, and I did reach out, but it was mostly to see if he needed anything. We have a faculty member who also teaches part time at Interlock, and I thought, gosh, if he needs any books or mouthpieces or anything, I could just send them along with my colleague, you know. So I reached out that way, and then he wrote back and asked a few questions about the school. And I had a student that was a freshman that year from Costa Rica who had just graduated Interlock, and Bassett didn't know him, but his sister was a trombonist and a classmate of Bassett's at Interlock. And I think the two of you might have talked or something. I don't know. I seem to remember that. But you know, I was trying to tell him about the school because I know I have lots of people come here internationally and nobody knows anything about Kansas or the university. And we always like to say people on the East Coast don't know much about west of the Mississippi, and people on the West Coast don't know much about east of the Rockies. We're kind of in the middle. So I was just telling him about the school, but right when that was happening, we had a visitor who was the president of the country of Colombia, and it turns out he had just won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was an alum. He had graduated with a master's degree from KU. And so I thought, well, that'd be kind of cool to tell Bassett. And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, I said, Bassett, we had this alum came and he just won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I don't know what most 17-year-olds would say when you tell them that. Bassett looked at me and said, maybe I'll be next. And that just astounded me when he said that. I was like, wow, yeah, maybe.
I wouldn't bet against that either.
I mean, he just said it without thinking, and I really took a liking to him. And actually, what was interesting happened at the time. My colleague, the band, we invited him here for a high school music festival that took place in January, the end of January. And at the time, our director of bands, Paul Popeil, his wife was working in the provost office, and she had seen the video on CBS, and it went around the whole office, including to our top executive, the provost. And she asked to meet with him while he was here. And we had this nice meeting with her and Paul Popeil, my colleague. And she's originally from India, so she kind of had this, an experience where she came from somewhere far away to come to Kansas. She was an alum from here too. And she's now the president of the University of Louisville, by the way. And she said after that meeting, she said, let's get him here. And when you have your top person on the university say something like that, it makes things kind of move in the scholarship realms and support realms. So things started moving, and we were able to come up with a way to get him here and not go into financial hardship or anything. So I think we turned out to be a decent choice for you anyway. So that's how he ended up here.
Yeah, that was. I mean, the way that all worked out, and the role that Steve you played in setting this all up and making it happen it was sort of amazing. And then to cover the rest of it, Robin Korovar and I did another GoFundMe, and this was very interesting because of the CBS News story, it had some legs, and then GoFundMe decided to feature Baset's story in their first edition of GoFundMe Heroes, which is their sort of, it's a PR thing that they were just starting to do. So they sent photographers and did the story. And so when we kicked off the campaign, it was through that, and then it got picked up by something called the Good News Network, which, first of all, I never knew there was something called good news. I just thought news was always awful, but it's an internet thing that has 9 million people they send a blast out to, and they featured the story. And then, strangest of all, the Fox News on their web edition, not on the live media, featured the story as well. So in like 3 days, we raised about 80 G's. It was like one thing after another popped, and actually the biggest chunk of that came the day it hit Fox News, which I found ironic that a young man who's from a country that most people can't find on a map in the U.S. Sorry, I mean, and someone who was raised, in a Muslim country, had such a support from folks who politically might not predict would care so much, but everybody wanted to make a difference. And between the two campaigns, we had over 1,100 people who donated. And that just shows how, as a country, we see something like this and we go, I want to make a difference. I want to help. I want to do something for somebody. And we have this, I think, this collective feeling, especially, now because of what's happened in Kabul, it's more of a political issue. But I think before, we saw a country that had been, the country of Afghanistan, that had been in turmoil for so long, and people are like, I want to do something. And this was tangible, and people could, literally give $5 or whatever. And so we had over 1,100 people donate to make up the difference between what this now 5 years of school was going to cost, and what KU was so generous to supply. And I don't know, it just makes me believe in humanity again.
Well, there were some comments on that GoFundMe that just blew me away. There was one guy, I'll never forget it. He said that he was a soldier from Kansas in Afghanistan, and that his Afghani partner saved his life or helped him tremendously. And he said, now's your turn to come to Kansas, Bassett. And I think he gave $500 or something like that. And he just said, now it's your turn. And
I remember that one. It was incredibly touching.
Yeah. I mean, you just don't know who you're touching with music and these kind of things. But, Bassett's the one making it all happen because of his dreams and his hard work. And I've always thought, he's a people person, he met the provost and he stayed in touch with her. You still speak with her sometimes, don't you? Once in a while?
Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, I met her once and that was with you, and I've been here 20 years. So, 19 years, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, so he just touched everybody when he was here, and immediately touched the whole studio. And yeah, we had our times. Every day wasn't perfect together, but just like any teacher-student relationship. And we had a lot of talks about different things. We even talked about, I don't know, I don't want to jump the gun here, Mark, but there was a time when he was a sophomore, and we started talking about adding majors, because there were many times that Bassett would come into a lesson and he just look really tired and distraught because of constant news coming from back home, and probably staying up late talking to your family. I think you did that an awful lot. And one day he said to me, he said, if anything ever happens to my dad, I have to support my 3 sisters and my mom when I graduate at 22. And he said, I'll need a job. And David talked about pressure, and here I am, the trumpet teacher, thinking, okay, music performance degree. All right. I was just hoping to get you into good grad school, but this is a little different, So we talked about, and I started talking to friends of mine, and, we have people from all over Kansas that are majoring in global international studies, and they take years to get to know life internationally that Bassett already had with him. And I thought, gosh, it needs to be something international and something, I think you'd be great at that because you understand people all over the world. So maybe, so I don't know how you found your exact majors, Bassett, but it was such a nice thing when you told me you were expanding. And we have a BA here that allows that to do music and other things. So it worked. We figured out a way to do it. So
yeah, Bassett, tell people what degrees you are going to get next May.
Yeah, so just what Mr. Weisberg said, and many other friends encouraging, me to study something also. A lot of it is something different, just because I had the experience living both in East and West, speaking a few languages, and I was interested in public service based on my background and experiences, what I have seen in Afghanistan. I always wanted to help people. And so having those kind of conversations with mentors and friends got my interest a little bit to study something different. But it was until, one of my friends asked me a question that I then said, okay, this is what I'm going to do for sure. He asked me that, yeah, I know that you want to make a difference in the world. But while you're waiting for someone else to do it for you, if you want to do it, you need to be the one. And so be the way you want to do this way. Then I was like, okay, I think that's it. And I started learning a little bit about other degrees at KU, and my second degree then was global and international studies. And I, when I learned a little bit about this, I added that, but of course I would still keep looking because I didn't know at the time that in college you have the option to study multiple things at the same time, because in Afghanistan that's not true. When you go to university, you only study one degree at a time. And so when I learned that, I explored minors and stuff. And, I had Middle East as a minor. Later, then my advisor told me that I could possibly do a third degree, but it will be really difficult. He did not recommend it, but I thought if I could do it, why not? Let's do it. So right now I'm studying political science, global and international studies, and music, and my minors are in Middle East studies and intelligence and national security.
Amazing. How many of us have a hard time getting one degree, and you're getting 3+2 minors? Like, always feeling out of.
I always say to my friends that if I knew about this when I first arrived here, I could have done more, but I'm still happy with it.
I wanted to ask,
5 degrees.
I wanted to ask Steve, how did this Baset coming in change the culture of your studio and maybe even the school? Because you're seeing somebody with this really, the background that they've overcome, the way they've come over, and then, just the work ethic to be getting 3 degrees. I mean, that has to light a fire under some people.
Oh yeah, I mean there are no more excuses in our studio. It's like there are no hardships. It's just you come from a situation like Bassett, and he's so positive about everything. It really spreads. And I think that's one of the things we offered too. Is we offered a group of people from China and from Costa Rica and from Europe and all over the U.S. and everybody kind of gets along and helps each other. And he just kind of fit in right away with everyone here, I think. And it's been a real pleasure. That first year was kind of a big deal for us because we had like one of those big deal concerts that sometimes schools have. And in April there was he was a freshman. In August, September, that spring was the wind ensemble was going to the Kennedy Center. And so and actually there was a commissioned piece called Freedom from Fear by Kevin Waltzik, and it was about refugees. It was about things like that, and it was kind of a big deal, and some Washington people were invited. And we have auditions for that group every year, and let's just put it this way. I think we needed 6 trumpets and we took 7. So Bassett was definitely on that trip. And but what was amazing is not just what he did playing with the group. I remember the band got there on Friday. Everybody had Saturday free to tour around Washington, and the concert had a dress rehearsal and concert on Sunday. And Bassett asked me if I could join him for an interview with Voice of America. And I said, gosh, my dad's 85th birthday was that weekend, and I was driving up to meet them halfway. I'm from Connecticut and in New Jersey to have a day with my dad for his birthday. So I missed it. But it turns out Bassett spent the entire day interviewing with Voice of America, talking about Afghanistan. And when the concert came on Sunday, I don't know how many people you had invited, but there must have been 20 or 30 people from the community in DC that really didn't know you except for online, right? They just met you, and they came from all over the DC area to come see you in that concert, right? How many people were there? It was quite a few.
Yeah, I'm exactly not sure, but yeah, as you said, some of these people I didn't know. We just connected online, and they were really kind to come to concerts, and some of them were not happy because they were like, "Why you staying in a hotel? Why you didn't come to my place?" But I did need to explain the whole situation, but people were really kind to support there. But I mean, I love being around people, and I hope people understand that. And so maybe that's why we kind of connect sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just amazed, and I think you said that that whole interview was broadcast back home, right? I mean,
Yes, it was on the national TV.
so
Yeah.
yeah, Bassett always takes the extra step to make special things happen, so that's really amazing. So
Well, speaking of special things, of course, then some of people that are friends with you guys on Facebook, you'll see that there was the concert that you guys did with the Herald Trumpets and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I'm wondering if you guys might talk about how all that came to be and how that concert happened and what the significance was of that for each of you. Anybody can go first.
that was David and Bassett's thing. I just kind of jumped along at the end for the ride. So
Well, Bassett wanted to do something. He mentioned to me that he wanted to do something, with the military to thank the soldiers from the U.S. who worked so hard and sacrificed so much. Some of them, the ultimate sacrifice for his country, and so he ran with it, and he started making some calls, and all of a sudden stuff started happening. It's the usual stuff with Bassett. It's like he gets an idea and then everything falls into place. He makes sure it works. So you called Kevin Paul, right? How did you know Kevin?
So yes, I was talking with Mr. Belger because that summer I was going to be in Washington D.C. and I thought this is a great opportunity. And when we were talking, I was talking with Mr. Belger. He said, "Do you have any military contacts?" I said, "Sure, I do." But he said, "Well, let me contact. I know someone." And he directly contacted Kevin Paul himself, and and then through him, Kevin called me, and we started exploring about the option of going to DC and doing this program.
Yeah, I didn't know if you knew him at all from the web before that, because you do know everyone everywhere. But Kevin is actually an amazing trumpet player. He's just a beautiful player, and a super guy. And the two of them just started scheming, and then Kevin is he's another one of those follow through guys. He gets an idea, and the military trumpet jobs, that website, that's his site. All those videos that are going up all over Facebook, that's all Kevin's stuff. I mean, he's one of those tireless dudes who just you know get stuff done. And then so we planned this stuff out, and it was going to be in 2020, except something happened. I don't know quite what that was. Pandemic. And so it got delayed, which was actually a huge disappointment, because I was looking forward to getting together and doing this, and I wondered whether it would ever happen later. But Bassett, you like stuck with it, right? You sort of reached back out and made sure it happened, right?
Yes, and of course Kevin was amazing as well. They were all excited about the program, and they always told me that we will do it at some point, and they always told us different times. But to figure out a military band and then my own schedule, Mr. Belger's schedule, of course, very much busy with orchestra, was always difficult. And then they were, I think, planning to do the concert a week after 9/11. And when he told me that, I said, well, 9/11 will be actually much cooler than doing it a week later after the big day. And they said, well, because of security issues, we might not be able to do 9/11, which I understand. But then he did the work, all the hard work, and he came back and said, yes, we can do 9/11. And a couple of weeks ago, we went there and did the performance and the event.
Well, and Kevin also was amazing, and he set up he set it up so that we could together, and with a couple of my kids, we were able to place a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown. And I don't know, that's for me was another one of those life events that
Yeah.
I will remember forever. It's just to be in that place. And for me, it has extra meaning because my dad was a Navy flyer in World War II, served in the Pacific, and I couldn't help but think about him when I was there. And just to have my 9-year-old there as well in that ceremony. I mean, it's just really, really incredibly special. And then Kevin played. It's probably the best version of taps I've ever heard. And he said he was a little nervous because, CBS News was there and a lot of the guys from the band were there to listen and be a part of that ceremony. It was really cool. And then Bassett played taps himself on 9/11 at the World War One monument, which is a new feature in DC, and Yari Villanueva was there. He has Mr. Taps USA was there and helped to set that up, and he has a connection with the monument, and that was special. And then the next day we did this concert with the Army ceremonial band, volunteers. It was a brass ensemble from that group, and they sounded awesome too. And we all got to play together. It was the first time I got to play with Steve, which was really cool. And we did some stuff, and Bassett did a beautiful accompanied version of taps with the ensemble, and it was really touching. I mean, the whole thing is just, I don't know, I just get chills thinking about it because it's just one of those, when you connect like that, it's amazing. And I also just have such great respect for the players who play in those military bands, and I know that, especially the ceremonial guys, they are out there when it's snowing and 11 degrees, playing taps at a funeral for a Korean War veteran, or something, and it's just, it's super meaningful for the family, but they're doing how many of those a week? But I have such great respect for the honor that they bring to that, and the artistry that they bring to this act of remembrance, and then to actually get to play real rep with them, where they're getting around those horns and not just playing some open tones on a bugle. Just some amazing players, and I just love their commitment, and it was just, I don't know, I can't say enough about it. It's just
it was incredibly special for me too. When Bassett told me he was going to DC to play a concert, wait a minute, what's all this about? And so he told me, and he put me in touch with Kevin, who I didn't know, but this is how crazy the world of music is. The guy who was my mentor in college, the upperclassman that guided me, was a guy named Dan Smith. He went on to be Command Sergeant Major of Pershing's Own, at the top NCO in that organization until he retired a year or two ago, who hired Kevin Paul. And talking to Kevin, his teacher was Ray Riccomini, who I mentored in college when I was a grad student and Ray was a freshman. So the connections throughout music just really played that weekend, getting to, it was such a special moment. Kevin invited me to play a piece with him and Bassett, and it just to get to play in my roommate's former organization, and with David at the end, and hear and see the ceremonies. I mean, I just couldn't ask for anything better. It was one of those moments to just amaze in life. And the other thing I wanted to mention before is I actually met Robin Corvar like 15 years ago at a music festival in Colorado. So when she was helping Bassett, she contacted me, and we already knew each other. I mean, it's all kind of seems like it's following a plan, so it's pretty amazing. So,
and I knew Robin from when I played in the Dallas Symphony, and she was living in Dallas, and we weren't like buddies or anything, but she was at my house for a party. I don't know. It was like one of those little, another connection. And then, a couple of decades later, we're back, doing doing great stuff,
Even this podcast. I mean, I met Steve in 1999 or two.
Nine? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, played in Tenerife for a week and went to your house that looked like something out of the Hollywood Hills, and it's amazing. It's just such a small world, and but watching you guys have all that stuff unfold, I think, was incredible. And then I have to turn the next part of the story to the frightening side of things that would happen recently as the Taliban took control of the country again. And Baset, if you could kind of talk about that and your family's situation and how that was unfolding in real time.
This summer I was in Washington, D.C. for a congressional internship assignment. And so every day when I went to office, I actually read a real newspaper. I would have it like this and I would read it. And the majority of time there was something about Afghanistan on the front page. Yeah, of course, I wanted to read because I was perhaps one of the only Afghans on the Hill. And people would always ask me questions about Afghanistan, not only people that they work there as a staff, but also members. So I always wanted to make sure that I have some good knowledge when I'm talking. I can provide the best knowledge that I can. And just reading the news all the time, I figured a very similar line between the story of Iraq and Afghanistan. And then that's when I contacted my dad. I said the situation in Afghanistan would not end up good. Of course, I didn't know that the government will collapse, but I knew that the situation will not be fun anymore. And so I asked him if he could provide me all documents that would show that he worked with the U.S. troops and NATO allies in Afghanistan, which he did. And then I asked him if he could provide me some names and contact information of his American colleagues that I can reach out so they can also confirm his employment with them. He did send me only names, no photos of them or email address or anything. And I was like, wow, this will be difficult because I do not know these military officers and I do not know how I can find them. But kept looking for sure. And I, then in this story, I learned that, when people are saying, don't give up, of course, that's just words. It doesn't mean anything until you experience something. And then you were like, okay, now I understand what that sentences mean. That yes, there are times you are like, okay, this is not going to work, but you're like, let me try a little bit more. And when you do, you figure something out. I was very lucky to find two of my dad's colleagues. One was a 3 or 4-star military officer, and the other one was a lieutenant colonel. Oh no, it was a colonel actually. And I reached out to them. I told them who I am and that we needed a recommendation letter that would state that my dad worked with them, and they were really kind to provide all the documents that I needed. So by then, we collected all the information. Couple days after that, Kabul collapsed, or government in Afghanistan collapsed, and that's when the serious work started to make sure the family will get out of the country, because I knew it would be a tough situation since my dad worked with the U.S. and NATO troops, and also because of myself being in the U.S., being a trumpet player, and now having this assignment on the Hill. I thought that this will put their lives in great danger. And for that reason, my family did not leave the house for 9 days. And a lot of work, a lot of people reach out. I reach out to a lot of people that they work in government, people that they did not work in the government. People reach out themselves. I have friends that they send me pictures of, lighting candles for the family. So from people from across the country, reached out to support in this process, and the congressman that I worked, he was very kind to work hard, and of course all as a staff as well. And so it took 9 days. A lot of people it happened, and then when I come back to Kansas, I wanted to go say hi to Mr. Leisering that Monday. didn't know what I'm going to talk about, but I just want to say hi since I was not in Kansas for more than a year and a half or something like that because of COVID. And so when I talked with him, he told me that he has a friend, his daughter is actually in Afghanistan, and that was not good news to hear. And I connected with him. Mr. Livestream was very kind to make that happen very quickly. And so she was very kind once and I guess I can tell now the story since my family's out of Afghanistan. Again, it took 9 days. A lot of people, their names were and a lot of on a lot of different lists, so they can get out of the country. Actually, like 2 days ago, I received another email, someone asking me like how I can help the family, and I was like, they're already out. So people, I reach out to so many people, try to put their names on lists to go to Canada, the US, UK, Germany, Netherlands. So a lot of different places because I knew that if one option failed, then we need to have backup plans to make sure, because this was a situation of life and you cannot just play. It's not a video game to just say, well, if I die, I will come back and play it again. That wasn't the case. So we'll try everything. And so then I received a phone call from our congressman's office. He said, maybe your family should go to the airport at 3 a.m. And I said, okay. I called my dad. I said, well, maybe you should get leave. And they said, sure. They arrived at the airport at 5 a.m. The same gate that the next day the explosion happened at the same time. The Abbey Gate, and so they went there, and my sister provided the documents to the officers, to the soldiers, to let them in, and they told my sister to wait. And then my sister took out her phone and showed a picture of me standing in front of the Capitol, and she said to the officers that my brother is a congressman. And then seeing a picture of me standing with a nice suit in front of the Capitol, they, I think, believed that maybe I was a congressman or whatever they thought. But I think that for sure got their attention, and now they were willing to look at the list to see if they can go inside. And their names were, of course, on the list, and so they were inside. And they, I think, passed 3 or 4 gates, and then this amazing contact from Mr. Livestream, she was willing to go pick my family up from there, and I spent a couple hours with them at the airport, and they had food and took pictures and stuff, and they left within 8 hours once they arrived. So it's a little bit different story than what we hear on the news from Afghanistan, because a lot of people who at the time were waiting days outside the airport and days inside the airport to go to leave the country. But for my family, it was 8 hours. But of course, it took 9 days of planning. When they arrived there, we already knew that their names were on the list for 2 different flights. It wasn't just that we were playing it and say, okay, once you get inside, life will be good. That wasn't the case, because I knew that was not the case. So it was a lot of people, of course, supporting in this process, and a lot of planning. And of course, one thing I think now I appreciate about colleges, that for sure, and especially maybe my intelligence studies, that they teach you, like, this is how you think. You do not play around. You should be able to figure out what's happening. And now I appreciate my college degree a little bit more, since it helped me with real life situation. And so now they are in Abu Dhabi. Hopefully they will be arriving in the US in the next couple of days or weeks, but hopefully this month.
I can't help but think, what if, as a 15 or 16-year-old, you hadn't reached out over the web saying, I have a dream to come to America?
Yeah.
You and your family would be in Kabul right now. Right?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, what a great bit of luck that you had the dream and that you chased it and that you have found people to help you to do what you want to do. It's just such a, I don't know. Again, it gives me shivers just to think like, wow, because of you and the trumpet and your desire to do high school at Interlochen, and then the way that Steve helped you to be in college, because of all of those things coming in line, all those dominoes falling, your family's out and they're safe and you're safe. And thank God, man.
And I've learned from Bassett too, just like you said, don't give up. And when he came and met me, he said, they have their documents, but they don't know if they'll get in a gate. And it's a quick story, but I had just arrived because my dad passed a month before, actually a week or so before, and the funeral was on a Thursday. And before I left, I met with literally some old friends that I grew up with, and one of them I hadn't seen in 35 years, and we sat and we had a beer and we talked, and he told me his daughter had just deployed to Kabul. And so when Bassett told me they just don't know if they can get in a gate, I said, normally I just felt helpless like everybody else, but I thought, let me send my friend Chris a text. And I texted him, and he texted right back. He goes, send me more information. So Bassett actually sent me all the documents he had about his father and his dad's name and family names, and those letters from the current general and colonel. And I forwarded that, and he said, I just sent them to my daughter. Maybe she can help. She's the aide to the colonel in command. And I just thought, oh my gosh, and so it just, a lot of things had to happen from a lot of different people, but she was able to be part of it because then I got a message that she was in touch with Bassett and the family for several hours, like overnight, I think. And then I got a text from him saying they have a handler. It turns out that handler didn't, like, the family left, I guess, before the handler made contact. But she was there when they did get through and helped them get on a plane. And I mean, but I actually learned that kind of thing from Bassett, just to see, don't give up, just try everything, and it was such an amazing feeling to know that, one email can help. It's the same way he sent one email to David, one email can change lives, it's just believe in it, so.
Emails are cheap, you do not need to put a stamp on it or whatever. I do it,
Exactly.
No, I mean, I even sent an email to the commander who was in charge of the whole operation, and he was very kind to send a message back, and he said, we'll take care of it. But I also asked the former governor of Kansas to write him a letter, and the congressman who I worked with, he sent him a letter to make sure that they will take care of the family. So yes, as Mr. Leisrig said, a lot of people came together. A lot of people even do not know each other for sure, but a lot of people came together to make this happen. Some people I didn't know before I met during this process. One of it's a funny story. One of the flights that we booked for the family from Kabul, someone called me from Washington, D.C., and in the morning I was actually in a class. So because of family situation, I'm okay, school is important, but not that important. So I went outside, talked with this guy. He said, I'm in Washington, I'm trying to help people. And he said, I can get your family on this flight at this time if you help me with something. And I said, sure, I will be able to help you. And I said, well, that's great that you can put them on this flight, but the problem is getting inside, as you know. And he said, well, if I'm calling you, it means you know a lot of people and you can figure it out. And I was like, I do not know if you can help me, please do. He said, well, I know you can figure it out. And I said, that's not the case, but so he didn't help with that. He did put their name on the list, but it took a little bit more, to work to make everything happen. But of course, I mean, this guy, I do not even know him or met him before. He just called me, was like, I can put their name on the list if you help me with this. And I was like, all right, I guess I will do that for sure. So a lot of people came together. We're really grateful. Our family is very grateful to be in a safer place, and we are very excited for them to join us here, and for me to see them after almost 6 years. It will be an exciting time.
It's such an it's just amazing story, like top to bottom, how all four of you, how all three of you came together over this, and everybody's thrilled, Basit, that you're going to see your family after so long. You must have dreamed about this. I mean, I'm sure you've thought about just hugging your family and seeing them after so long. And
Yeah, I mean, we get old and we get beard and all these things, but you're a kid for your parents. Of course, my feeling toward them will never change. I still respect them just like I was a kid, and to know that they are coming here and to know that they will be safe, of course, is a special moment for. And of course, I like my stomach as well, and to know that they will cook food all the time and good food, it's like, okay, nothing better than that. So that will be good too. But no, I mean, my mom always told me that when you're coming back, of course, because I know women go through so much in Afghanistan, I always try to not tell hardships of life to family and especially mom, and you tell them it will happen, but she always asks me when I'm coming back or when she will be able to come to the US. But of course, you need to, you cannot tell the real story because you do not want to make anyone disappointed. And the reason for my family that was able to get out of Afghanistan within 8 hours was that I didn't want them to go to the airport for two reasons. And my first reason was that I didn't want to send them there and then they don't get inside and they go back home. But my mom, I thought she will be disappointed. She will feel hopeless. And I did not want that feeling for my mom. And of course, my dad, he's a military person. He can figure out life for himself. And my sisters are young, don't care so much about them. But mom's like, no, I do not want her to go through that. And of course, didn't want anyone to follow them back home. But my first reason was that I do not want, I do not want her to feel hopeless. And so to have, two people that I have so much respect for, that they have done so much, for us, for all of us, but, for me, certainly, to have them here and to be able to share meals and talk in real life and learn from them is just amazing.
wow. Well, it's for anybody who's watched this from the outside, your whole story unfold over the past couple years, and the help of Dave and Steve is just tremendous, and what great character they have, the way they've helped you out, and then the way I think you've returned the inspiration, 1,000 times over to everybody else that's kind of watched you, is just tremendous. And I'm just grateful you're here to tell this story, and I think we're all really grateful your family's going to be back with you.
Yeah, we are also grateful, but the reality is, life, the world is getting a little bit crazy right now. But you can always still find people that they are kind, that they are willing to help each other because life is all about that. It's not only about eating and sleeping and going to work. And I think those things are only for surviving. For me to eat food, to sleep, and even to work, it's really basically I want to survive. That's why I do it. And when the real life happens is when you're trying actually helping other people and making a difference in someone's life. I think that's when you should feel that you're a human being and that you live, because otherwise, as I mentioned, everything else we do is just to survive, nothing else. And so to help each other, to be kind to each other, make someone smile. I think that's when we should understand the meaning of life. That now, yes, I'm alive and I'm doing something, and I do know that I'm leaving tomorrow or the next day. But at least I made someone smile today, and I'm leaving now. Goodbye. I think that's the greatest thing to do.
Where do you come from? Hey, can we clone you whenever we start to do that? Because that's amazing, and I don't know what else to say after that.
He's going to change the world.
Yes.
So people, I think we will hopefully all change the world to a better place, you know. And as I said, you know, there are so many people. Of course, a lot of things are happening here and there in the US and other countries, but kind people are still here. And I mean, all of you on this call, of course, changed my life, and hopefully now I can carry that to other people, and we will continue to do the same thing. And hopefully soon we will have a better place, and we will all accept each other and live together and understand that, you know, this is all life. It's not about where we are from, how we look, how we speak, what we believe. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I know Mr. Belgium for like 5 to 7 years, more than that. I still do not know what he believes. I know he goes to church, but I do not know what he believes. We connected as human beings, and that was always important to me. And when I came to the US, as I mentioned before, I didn't think like, oh, this person is from Mexico, this person is from the US, this person. It's like, okay, you know, people I don't really care where they're from. Some people I even do not know where they're from. I connect with them, and they connect with each other in a personal basis, and I think that's important. And I really hope that, you know, we can all work to make a positive difference, long-lasting impact in the world, because I certainly do not want my children to go through what I went. And so for that reason, then you need to change something today. So it's like, you know, putting a fruit tree outside. So yes, I know that I will not be able to enjoy the apple tomorrow, but I know in a couple of years my children will. And when they do it, it's a happy time for me, right? I mean, I sometimes think that I'm grateful for so many people today, but so many people that I even don't know, maybe like my grandparents before them, I do not know them, but they made a difference in my life, because I know if they were not there, I would not be here. And then when they planted that tree, I'm, you know, enjoying the fruit today. So grateful for that. So I hope we can all start loving each other. I think that should be our goal.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to say anything else.
Well, that was a mic drop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys will hang on just a second, but thanks to everybody that watched this. Baset, you know, thank you for what you just said, and Steve and Dave, thank you guys for everything you've done for him. And I believe there's also a GoFundMe still for the family. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And that GoFundMe, we can find that by looking up.
By looking up on my Facebook page or Google, just write my name. I'm sure you will find it. I exactly do not know the link. I'm lazy. I do not learn these things, but
I'll make sure
on the internet. Yeah.
If it goes on YouTube, I'll make sure we put the link up there so people can see it. So, okay. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for doing this tonight. It was a really great story.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.